Rich and Mike Show, Flagler County's hometown sports show. Here are your hosts, Rich Carroll and Mike Licio.
Yes, it's another episode of the Rich Mike Sports Show. Good Saturday morning, Flagler County. And a good Saturday morning to you, Mike Licio.
Hello, Flagler County. Hey, Rich, 4th of July weekend, you know what that means?
What does it mean?
It's the beginning of my summer sabbatical from the day job, so let's celebrate.
It's the beginning of, well, I get an extra day off, so I'm happy with that. I'm very happy for the long weekend. It was a beautiful 4th of July celebration in Flagler County yesterday. Just amazing to be a part of it. Happy birthday, America. You said that in your sports report Thursday morning. It was Thursday this time, not Friday, obviously, because Friday was the 4th. But I don't know. This is one of those landmark days every year, Mike, where you can almost cut the year in half, and now it's the rest of the year because, we have some summertime left, but we know that as far as the Flagler Radio YouTube channel and the WNZF Sports Network, we are not too far away from the start of football season, and we're pretty pumped up about that.
And that's why it's the perfect time for my summer sabbatical from the day job. I always like to take about a week and a half after the 4th of July and kind of recharge the batteries from the day job. June's my busiest month at the day job, so it's a busy time there. And then I know that in about 4 weeks we begin football practice, fall football practice, and volleyball will begin fall practice as well and cross country. And once we get to the beginning of August, it's just a sprint till Christmas when I have my winter sabbatical. But it's an exciting time, and we didn't have a lot of sporting events going on in the county. We had the lacrosse tournament, which was extremely successful. Great job by Florida Lacrosse and the city of Palm Coast to put together a great event. Like I said, I think I said on a previous show, my son played in that event for his team, and it was just a great weekend. But it gave us some time to celebrate some of the greatness of Flagler County, where we didn't have a lot of stories as far as events happening, but we got to talk about a lot of players that made their mark on Flagler County sports throughout the year, thanks to our series recapping the News Journal All Area Awards teams.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to listen to, and it's great, just in case people did miss it in the News Journal, you listen to the radio, and not only do you hear who was awarded, but also you hear the voices of some of the athletes, the coaches. So it's a different perspective on the award season, and I think that a lot of people listening to it appreciate it and enjoy it. I love hearing the players and the coaches talk about their experience and now going on to the next stage of their athletic career in school, going on to college, and just so many great stories out there, and you've been able to capture that week by week, and it's been fun to listen to.
So I thought I'd take a few minutes. I appreciate that, because I thought I'd take a few minutes, not to go through everybody on the team, but just kind of, shout out some of the players who kind of really stood out on these all-area teams. Like, for example, Hayden Hayes, who put up a year for the ages being the offensive player of the year in football. Colby Cronk, defensive player of the year in football. Male athlete of the year. State champion and all-area track. He was on two teams. Malik Joseph made the team for FPC in football, and he was a first-team wrestler. Ladarian Baker, I put a lot on Ladarian Baker last year because I said he would have a breakout season in football. Then I said he'd be my breakout player in basketball, and all he did was make all-area team in football, basketball, and then was a district champion, making the all-area team in track. So he was a guy that lived up to the hype, and he didn't hype himself. It's unfair to Ladarian. He didn't hype himself. I did, and I know you did as well. We're big fans of Ladarian Baker, but those were some of the football players who were making noise. Tegan Paulo was all-area second team in football. He was on the all-area soccer team as well. Pretty cool stuff. That's just the first page. Yeah. We had a great football season, and it was pretty cool to see some of those football players go on and excel in other sports as well and continue their success.
A bunch of guys there, Mike, where you could look at it and say, man, that's the GOAT. That's the GOAT. All my years watching football. There are a couple guys where I look at it and I'm like, man, that might be the best player I've ever seen play at that position. For example, you bring up Hayden Hayes. He's the best quarterback I've seen at this level here locally. It was just amazing. You could say the numbers because his season was absolutely incredible. The only regret I have is that it's the only season I'm going to get to see him play here in Flagler County. So it's only one season, but man, in your words, it was a season for the ages. He was just incredible to watch. And when other teams would bring it offensively, it seemed that Hayden Hayes and the offense always had the answer with some deep pass down the sideline. He utilized all the weapons. He moved around the pocket, incredible vision. He was so much fun to watch. We only got it for 1 year, but man, what a year it was.
And it certainly was. We also, should mention Marcus Mitchell becoming FPC's all-time leading rusher. And, he had great offensive linemen in front of him. Gethin Pritchard, who was also, I believe he was also a weightlifter. I have to go. We have about 85 athletes that made all-county teams. So sometimes I got to go back and try and remember who made what where. And but yeah, we got to see a lot of things on the girls' side. We had state champions in Nina Borgman and Kendall Bibla, who both have won state championships. Kendall won one at Matanzas and one at FPC. We had 3 former state champions on the all-area team: Mariah Mills, Jocelyn Johnson, and look at me trying to remember everybody, Rich.
I mean, you're doing a pretty good job. That's a lot of names, Mike.
Yeah. Of course, how could I forget Tiana Fries, who also won a state championship at Matanzas. So we had athletes like Peyton Sarasi, who finished second in the state in the 3,200 and was and continually broke cross-country records for FPC, and then transferred and ran the 3,200 for Matanzas and made all-area team. So on both, we had Nia Williams, who was a girls weightlifter at FPC. She won a national championship about 2 weeks ago. We had coaches like David Boschadette, who was the girls wrestling coach of the year, coaches like Dave Halliday from FPC, and Coach Halliday was the boys track and field coach of the year and the girls cross-country coach of the year. So it was a year for stars, and I couldn't be more proud to be able to cover and highlight these stories. And there's probably about 50 or 60 people who I've missed on this list. That's why I tried to get them into the sports reports. Think about that, Rich. It took an entire month's worth of sports reports just to get through all the all-area athletes we had.
Yeah, it did. But you know what? It shows the success of sports here locally in Flagler County. There are a lot of special athletes here. We've got 2 very special schools doing incredible things. And, hey, we also have a radio station here that's covering it all with Mike Licio's sports reports every Monday and Friday from 6 to 9 in the morning. Check it out anytime on the Flagler Radio YouTube channel or the WNZF Facebook page. And, of course, a lot of the games that we covered, including the Matanzas Pirates softball team and their incredible run with Leah Stevens, a game away from the Final Four in the state championship run that they were on. And, man, all those games are available on the Flagler Radio YouTube channel. We mentioned the FPC Bulldogs, the great season that they had. You can still watch those games on the Flagler Radio YouTube channel. It was a banner year for sure, I think, for local sports in general. Both schools so successful, and of course, with us covering it, a lot more exposure for these athletes, and they deserve it because a lot of these stories, they deserve to be told, and that's our mission, is to tell these stories and get them out there. And Mike has been doing it for weeks now, just putting a bow on what was just an amazing season of sports here in Flagler County.
And you mentioned Leah Stevens. She was the all-area softball player of the year. Coach Sabrina Manhart was the coach of the year after a 23-2 Matanzas Pirates season.
Wow, Coach Manhart, congratulations. And yeah, she was our hero for one of those games. We had all our equipment set up, and a rogue cloud came and rained all over us, but she was able to bring the tarp out and save the cameras and save our computers so that we could. And we ended up broadcasting the game anyway, Mike. So not only was she Coach of the Year, she was a hero for the WNZF Sports Network, and we appreciate Coach Manhart.
And they are always so great to us. And they really are at both schools, which is what makes doing this so much fun, because it can be a chore. As we know, every time we have to leave Flagler County to cover something, it can be a chore. And we are very blessed that way. Leah Stevens, actually, there's a Mike Licio connection to everybody. Well, Leah Stevens, Florida announced last week that they had picked up, you might have seen it on my socials, Florida announced they had signed a pitcher named Allison Sparkman, whose nickname is Sparky. She's from Florida Gulf Coast, was probably, in my opinion, the best mid-major pitcher in the country, but she's transferring from Florida Gulf Coast to Florida. And Allison, good friends with my cousin Emily down in Fort Myers. So
you're kidding me.
That Florida pitching staff is going to be stacked. They're going to have Sparky, they're going to have Reagan Rothrock, the junior, and they're going to have Leah Stevens. So, as a Bulldog fan, it's not what I want to see, but
I am. I think I will be more locked in and interested in Gator softball than I've ever been in my life. I will be watching next year for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. And if you've never been to the KSP, the Katie Scholes Presley softball field in Florida, great place for a game. I got to go down there for a couple of games last year and look forward to going to a few more this year. It's a great place. Not a bad drive from Palm Coast, really. It's an hour and a half, but it's a nice, easy drive. So, make sure you get out there if you have a chance to get over and want to see the GOAT continue. And I don't think there's any question about her being the GOAT. We talk about all these players who could be the GOAT at certain things. Like Hayden Hayes, I don't think there's any question that Leah Stevens is that in softball.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And to be able to see those two athletes perform the way they did in the same school year, the same season for our WNZF Sports Network, it was just incredible to watch players play at that high of a level here locally. It's not something you see every year, but with the way the county is growing and the just excellent athletes we're seeing every single year, you'd expect that the success is going to keep coming and there's going to be more of it for years to come.
Rich, you talked about the morning sports Mondays and Fridays. They're attached to a little something called Flagler's Morning News that runs from 6 to 9 Monday through Friday. So you only get me 2 days a week, but you get 5 days of Rich. And, I listen. Believe it or not, I do listen to the sports or the news as much as I can stand to listen to Rich anyway. And we had 3 all-area golfers this year: Ivy Seclaris from FPC, Zoe Allred from Matanzas, and Trevor Chalice from Matanzas. And the reason I bring this up is because, Rich, you ran a story this week or last week on the Morning News that kind of talks about the place where they practice and where they hone their craft.
Oh, yeah. The Palm Harbor Golf Club has been a big topic of conversation here, hemorrhaging money, as they say. And what should we do about it? Should we improve the facility, be better, businessmen, or do we sell it, get rid of it? It's a big debate going on here in Palm Coast. And I'll run the story that we ran on the air because I just want to give a little perspective on it, and then we'll let Mike give his opinion on everything. So here's the story we ran. This is from the city council meeting, Palm Coast City Council meeting, the week of June 25th. So not too long ago. Here's the story we ran the morning of June 25th.
I'm completely against it. That golf course is the center of this city and has been for quite a long time. If we sell that golf course, it's over. That area of the city is going to be used up, and I'm not going to back anything like that.
Palm Coast Mayor Mike Norris saying he won't support any effort to sell the Palm Harbor Golf Course. At yesterday's City Council meeting, Norris said selling the 141-acre city-owned course would erase a major community amenity. He's calling for new management, higher user fees, and even a review of the city's agreement with Flagler schools, arguing the student golf teams should be paying their share.
Another thing as far as fees, do the schools' golf teams, do they pay fees to play golf on our golf course?
No, they do not.
They need to pay golf fees. Those kids pay fees every year to be part of those teams. They need to be paying a fee. We can't be giving golf away. we have the charge to maintain our golf course.
The city-owned course has operated at a loss for years, nearly $170,000 in the last fiscal year, and over $435,000 the year before that. A draft proposal would allow Palm Coast to sell the course with restrictions to keep it public. The city estimates it could be worth $1.8 million. But Councilman Charles Gambaro, who initiated the review, says holding on to the course may no longer make financial sense.
I think it's prudent for this council to put this thing out to bid and see what we can get for it. And at the end of the day, it'll be our decision whether or not we move forward. But what we've been doing in the past, hemorrhaging money without even accounting for the capital improvement plans, and we're just now putting that into the factor. I mean, it still doesn't overcome the money that we've lost.
Gambaro said he supports keeping it public, but believes $2 million should be the minimum sale price. The council remains divided with a final decision yet to be made. For now, Palm Harbor's future is still on the tee. You got $2 million laying around there somewhere, Mike? I think I want a golf club, but
I wish I did, because I'll tell you this: I am an avid golfer, hoping to play some this week while on the sabbatical, and hopefully one of those places will be Palm Harbor. And I can tell you this I won't get into whether they should sell or not, but I do have some thoughts on the rest of that story. As an avid golfer, I can tell you that I work and live in St. Johns County. I can tell you that many of my coworkers and friends who play golf, they would rather play at Palm Harbor than any of the public courses in St. Johns County and make the extra drive. The course over the last 2 years, I think it was combined about $600,000 in losses over the last couple of years. So raising user fees, I can understand that. That course it's well maintained. It's a great layout, and I could see where charging a more premium fee. I don't want to see it happen because I like to play golf, but I can understand that part of it. But what gets me as one of these sports guys in this county is the attack on the children. They're not losing. Palm Harbor is not losing $135,000 last year, or $170,000 last year rather, because the Flagler, Palm Coast, and Matanzas golf teams used the course. I believe it's Matanzas mostly at Palm Harbor. They're not. And he talks about fees. The kids pay fees. Well, guess what? Let me tell you, we had Coach Ethan Buchanan on here for Matanzas before the season started, and he talked about the effort he had to go through to get grants and fundraise for equipment, for shirts. He had to fundraise for shirts. So it's not like there's a lot of money being poured into a golf team that has 6 boys and 5 girls. It's not even like we're not talking about a football team. We're not talking about huge numbers. And these kids being on the range and hitting a bucket of balls is not why Palm Harbor is losing $170,000 a year. I'm not going to say I dove completely into the financials, but I can tell you that's not the reason. They're using the course in the afternoons, in the fall, when the days are shorter anyway, when the course is barely being used anyway. It's the slowest time of year for golf courses are fall afternoons because of the shorter days. And they're out there, they might go do a little putting, they'll hit they'll hit a bucket of balls, and they'll walk 2 or 3 holes. So to make it sound like these kids are stealing from the community, I have a problem with that, especially having been covering sports for as long as I have. I know that the impact of an athlete, of a kid being in a sport, the positive benefits to the community outweigh a $5 bucket of range balls. So, I understand the problems they're having with, finances and things and management and things like that. And I understand that things need to be done. I'm not going to get into whether I have an opinion whether the city should sell or not, but I just wanted to stand up for the kids who are out there, trying to better themselves, trying to get themselves to college, trying to learn life skills, things that they get from playing golf, learn how to interact with people, learn etiquette, learn how to play within rules, learn integrity, because integrity is a huge part of golf. These are things that these kids are learning. And if I'm a resident of Palm Coast, and I can tell you we have public courses in St. Johns County that are owned by the county, that, these are the things I'm not going to begrudge a kid for a $5 bucket of golf balls, knowing that this kid is probably going to go to college and then come back and have a positive impact on my community. And they're going to learn life skills that are going to make them better citizens for my community.
Yeah, I hear you. And, this is a debate that is ongoing, so no decisions have been made on what to do with the Palm Harbor Golf Club. The one thing I'll say, and I don't really like to have an opinion on these things as the news guy, but the one thing I'll say to you as a golf enthusiast, do we want to make golf even less accessible to youth, than it already is? It's not an easy sport for kids to get into necessarily, right? Unless you're in the right family or you get into a school program. So do you want to make the sport less accessible to youth than it already is?
And I personally don't. As a golfer, I might be a little biased in that, but I think there's a lot of great things. I tried very hard to get my daughter in the golf, and she was not interested, which is okay. Maybe it's okay. But my son Michael plays golf, and he was on a school golf team in the St. Augustine Shores Golf Club, which is a privately owned. It's a public course, but it's privately owned. It's owned by an individual, and he let the middle school teams practice there. He lets Pedro Menendez high school practice and play there, and they're not hemorrhaging money. Now they charge a little bit more, but I would say this: the Shores is not as nice as Palm Harbor, so it's again. I see other golf courses do. Hell, St. Augustine High School practices for free at Marsh Creek, which is a private golf club with an exclusive membership. So if courses with other, if courses that are in the business of making a profit, not a city-owned venture, can do it, I don't see why Palm Harbor can't continue to do that. And like I said, I think that the benefits to the community outweigh the 3 holes that they're walking that nobody's on anyway, and the $5 bucket of balls they're hitting. So, that's just my opinion. That's not an attack on anybody. I just wanted to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves in this case. Like I said, Palm Harbor is a gem, and Palm Coast is very lucky to have such a wonderful course.
Yeah, it's a nice facility. So that's Mike's opinion on Palm Harbor Golf Club. And we're going to hear his opinion on the new Knicks head coach, Mike Brown, after this.
Thank you so much for recommending us to your family and friends. When you need a 30, 60, or 90-minute massage, it's real easy to book your appointment online. MassageByNatalie.org. MassageByNatalie.org.
Rich Mike Sports Show, July 5th, Saturday morning. Mike, the New York Knicks finally make their decision. They hire a head coach. It was not somebody else's head coach. Looked like they were trying to do for a while there. They get Mike Brown, a guy who, he is a 2-time NBA Coach of the Year, and he's an offensive-minded coach, so it seems like they're going in a different direction from Tom Thibodeau, a guy who brought the Knicks to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years, changed the culture of this franchise that was a laughingstock for 25 years for the most part, other than a couple of seasons. You had the 50-win season with Melo, and that's about it. So it was a tough couple of decades there for the New York Knicks. Thibodeau comes in, turns it around. To be fair, it wasn't just Thibodeau. It was Julius Randle, who the franchise showed no loyalty to, shipping him out last year for Karl Anthony Towns. Also, Jalen Brunson coming in, who has shown a lot of loyalty to the franchise, took less money than he could have gotten. So to be a New York Knick and give the franchise flexibility to bring players in and go after a championship. So a lot of people were a part of that. But Thibodeau, he was a huge part of it. And he gets fired, and the guy you replace Thibodeau with is Mike Brown. Mike Licio, what do you think of that hire?
It's a lateral move, in my opinion. I think you have a coach who's had a lot of success, just like Thibodeau had, that never quite got over the hump, even though the advantage he had is that he had one of the greatest players of all time to try and get over that hump. Now, you said the Knicks didn't go after somebody else's coach, and I agree. Obviously, they didn't, but I would argue that Mike Brown probably should still be the coach of the Sacramento Kings. So I don't hate it. I just don't love it. I think, I like that they did go get somebody who has an actual track record of success and didn't go and get a retread, which you see a lot in the NBA. You see a lot of guys who somehow lose 50 to 60 games a year and keep finding jobs. So I'm glad they went and got somebody with a track record of success. I'm just not sure he's the guy to get them over. But if there was ever a year for the Knicks to do it, it's going to be this coming year.
Yeah, you got a significantly weakened Eastern Conference when you look up and down with what happened to the Celtics, injuries, the Pacers. The Bucks look like they're waving a bit of a white flag, an odd move that they did with Turner and releasing Dame. So those were all interesting moves. But you're looking at a weakened Eastern Conference. I like the move because the most recent track record of Mike Brown, who is a two-time NBA Coach of the Year, Thibodeau as well. But the one thing Brown has that Thibodeau does not have is that he did go to he did bring his team to the NBA championship that one year with LeBron. That's a young LeBron swept by the San Antonio Spurs, and that was a roster with Delamendova at point guard, and just not a great roster. You had LeBron, but it was a young LeBron. And it was a LeBron in a cast of question marks. So I give him credit for that run. But what really impresses me about Mike Brown is the 1 year with the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings had not reached the playoffs, I think, since 2006. And in 2022, his first year, they were one of the top offensive teams in the league. They get into the playoffs for the first time since 2006 and take the Golden State Warriors to a Game 7. And Sacramento Kings, being who they are, fire him the very next year. They end up trading De'Aaron Fox. And, who knows what they're doing ever in Sacramento. But I think the job he did in Sacramento was impressive. And the fact that he's an offensive coach, maybe he can figure out how to use the offensive weapons on this team. And that was, aside from the utilization of the bench, the ability to come up with an offensive philosophy that utilizes Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns as a duo, as a Stockton Malone type duo. It just wasn't there. These guys in the playoffs looked like they hadn't played together the entire season. And you mentioned it too, Mike. The only time they were successful on the floor was when they weren't on the floor together. Brunson would come back in the game and Towns would never see the ball again. And what happened, I don't in a league that it's pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, how are we seeing when Karl Anthony Towns is on the floor, how are we watching Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart pick and rolls? It should be Towns, Brunson pick and roll repeatedly, just over and over again. That's what it should be. And those guys would be nowhere near each other. So there's a ton of offensive talent on this team. Whether you're talking about Brunson, Towns, you're talking about the guy they made the big trade for, Bridges, utilize him better. So a better offensive coach, that's where this team is going. And I think it's a good move because you don't necessarily need like that mind-blowing, wow, did you see who they got? This is a team with a great roster. You don't need that sexy head coach, hire. You need someone who's solid. And I think Brown is a guy who has coached big-time superstars in this league, has had success, and he is offensive-minded, and that's what this team needs right now. I think it's a really good hire.
And I like the moves they made, getting Clarkson and getting Gershon. I'm not going to try and say his name. I'll have his name down by the time season starts because they've added depth. And I think that was one of the things. We didn't know if the Knicks had depth or not. But they definitely – I feel more comfortable with those two and Deuce McBride coming off the bench. I feel a lot more comfortable with that along with Mitchell Robinson. And to your point, when you don't have it, Mikal Bridges – underperformed this year. He underwhelmed. And how much of that was Mikal Bridges and how much of that is just being in a system where there seemed to be no cohesion? Even when they were winning games, it always looked so hard for the Knicks. And you never really felt like they were just in a rhythm. It just felt like they were just struggling and fighting for every point. And so in that respect, I think you're right. Bringing an offensive-minded coach is what this team needs. I don't know if they're quite there yet as far as, being a title contender, but if there ever was a year, like I said, the East is wide open and, and then I think they're a better team. And I think that's the important thing to remember is that they are a better team than they were just 2 months ago.
Yep. And you know what the end result of all of this will be? The king, a new king of New York, LeBron James, will be on his way to reunite with Mike Brown at the Garden, the Mecca. And I'll make this bold prediction. With Mike Brown as the head coach of the Knicks and LeBron in the fold, the Knicks will have the premier offense in the NBA next season. Have a great weekend, Flagler County.